What's the basis for spaceships except for conveyance to escape the matrix? No, but it's more than you've seen it do. I promise you that my bars is rap genius proof, and I'd rather take the scenic route. I'm not the type that...
Hello, welcome to Hold This Mic. My name is Josh Kurz-Burchard, and I'm here with...
Akil Vix.
And visiting...
Sayeh Magaziner.
And we are here in South Philadelphia. We're very excited to have Sayeh visiting to discuss some things with us. We've been chatting a little bit beforehand, like we do. We kind of like, get a little sense of what's on each other's minds, because then it's no secret and there's no like, stumbling over topics or anything like that. So
my Facebook had really intrigued you, right? That's
yes,
sort of the catalyst.
I noticed that Sayeh was very outspoken on Facebook around some of these issues that have arisen from the Trump administration,
right?
Around immigration, around women's issues, and around just
race. Really, I mean, just pick a day, pick a morning, pick a headline, and it's all horrifying. Healthcare. I mean, it's just
yeah. So I guess just to start, why don't we just Why don't we just talk about DACA, since that is a recent like issue, and it's an issue that has to do with immigration. It has to do with what it means, what does it mean to be American? The people who are in power right now seem to have this very narrow-minded idea of what that means, whereas like the Obama administration people plus the whole sort of like liberal world has a very different idea of about openness and inclusion, and America, the essence of America being that it's a nation of immigrants and so on and so forth. So
I think the liberals know what actually makes America great, and conservatives have this whitewashed, pun intended, version of what it makes America great. And I think that's the two.
Right.
That's the split there between the parties.
So let me get that pun straight. You're saying it's whitewashed because...
They don't understand, they don't acknowledge or understand or want to give any credence to the contributions of immigrants and people who are not white, people who are not fit the norm of America.
And the term whitewash means like to make something, to like say, oh, fuck it, and just like throw a coating.
Just put a nice little white coat over the achievements of everyone.
Over the complexity of life and the necessary, differences and things that actually make up the human race or whatever.
Well, it's all about who belongs. The conversation is always like, who really belongs here, right? Like, who's a guest here? Who's being allowed to be here? I mean, that's not even people who jumped a fence or waded a river or, piled into a truck. I mean, these are people who are been here for generations and generations and generations and still face this question of, are you American? Do you belong here? You're a guest here. And I think DACA is just like the latest, most egregious iteration of that, in my opinion.
Right. And maybe even also like, who belongs here is like, white folks, I guess, make up the majority, but more so that white folks have it in, that somehow we have it in us to take the wealth and power that we've amassed, and we'll use it to like bloody your situation, like it's like there's a history of terrible things happening because of this idea, right? So like there's this so like a friend of mine, Carlos, I'm just going to say his name. I'll just say his first name.
We can bleep it out later, Yeah.
Or you can just call him by his first name.
I'll call him by his first name. Carlos. Carlos is it's a Latino first name. He's actually, his mom is white and his dad is black. And his dad might be Latino, but I'm not sure. He and Jeremiah, who is known to both of you,
Sure.
went on a trip back in like high school down to like Virginia. And they were like at a party, and Carlos was sitting on a couch, and you know, they didn't know anyone, and it was a bunch of you know, white guys, and they didn't have any, they were sort of, you know, I don't think they were that especially nervous, and they were just kind of hanging out. And then all of a sudden, some guy from above drapes a Confederate flag and just drapes it on Carlos.
Stop.
On his face.
Stop.
And down on his, he's like, what the fuck
Stop.
is this? And he like
Wow.
gets up and he's like, what the you know, he flips out.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because
As
what would
one
you
should.
do?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the threat.
Yeah.
That's the conniving, like, evil threat that, like,
Well, it's the
people-
consistent reminding.
Yeah.
It's the consistent reminding and otherizing of everybody else. I mean, that goes to the Confederate flag conversation. It goes to the statues, the monuments. It's the consistent reminding. I mean, that is an incredibly, almost like violent way to do it.
That's violent. That's
I mean,
what I'm
it's
saying,
really an
yeah.
assault to do
It's an
that to
assault,
somebody.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's, hey, don't think you belong here.
Right.
Like, here's a reminder
Well, yeah.
of our history and why, like, you
Right.
don't belong here, which is why the conversation around the monuments and people saying, you know, it's preserving history, or, you know, why people who want them gone is it's a reminder. It's, hey, it's an intentional reminder.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not an incidental
Yeah.
reminder. It's an intentional. The intent was to
Right.
remind people of color that they don't belong here.
Right.
And DACA is the latest iteration of that, or the
The not
rescinding
Rescinding,
of DACA
yeah.
is the latest iteration of that.
Right.
That really is also like terrorizing people. So, you know,
Right.
you had all these people that came forward during the Obama administration and declared themselves, were promised that there would be no repercussion for declaring themselves as undocumented. And now, so their names are somewhere on a database where they can just be plucked and found. And they're being told, okay, you have until October 1st or 15th or whatever, it's really coming up, to renew. And that's only if you qualify. Not all of the dreamers, not all of the DACA people qualify for this, you know, renewal. There were lots of sort of caveats, like if you are this, you can't renew. If you're this, you can't renew. And so then there's a small subgroup who can renew. And then within a month, they have to procure the $495 fee, paperwork fee to renew. So that totally blocks out tons of people because they don't have it, and you usually need a lawyer to help you navigate this.
Yeah,
so
right.
that's
Like how to answer each question.
right. You need an immigration lawyer to help you with that, and even the immigration lawyers. Like right now, there's a GoFundMe page that's been popping up on my Facebook for one individual, and it's one individual who needs $1,000 because his lawyer is giving him the bargain rate of $400 for putting all this paperwork together. The paperwork itself is $500. So, and they have a month.
Yeah.
They have a month from the
Right.
decision. Oh, hey, we're gonna repeal this. To a small narrow subgroup of you can apply to renew. And we're gonna technically make it impossible for you to do so because you don't. Who can pull $1,000 out of their ass in a month when they're trying to make ends meet?
Right.
So it's just it's all of these sort of outright and insidious sort of underhanded ways to remind people that they don't.
I mean,
have
I think
power.
even DACA itself, even the way DACA was structured, it's still this like we're building this ranking system of people, right? Like, you know, we're going to give you this reprieve in DACA, but only if you're the most innocent of the innocent. You were brought here, you didn't have a choice.
Right.
Yeah.
You meet these certain requirements.
Right.
You've never made a mistake in
Never
your
got a
life.
speeding
Right.
ticket.
You're contributing. You have to make sure that we know you're contributing.
Right.
You know, you've never committed a crime, even though we know that immigrants commit less crime on average than native-born citizens. So we're doing all these extra things to like let people know, like, oh yeah, you know, this is like the super big privilege that we're
Right,
giving you,
right.
and you don't really deserve this, but you know, if you're like really, really, really nice, maybe we'll accept you. And it's the same thing. It's the same bill of goods that they sold, black people post Jim Crow, like, be this like super exemplar citizen and maybe we'll respect you and let you in on the second. And it never happens.
No,
it never happens.
It's still the same.
Right, because the deal that's going down is not. There's absolutely there's a huge imbalance in terms of who has power and leverage and who doesn't.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're an immigrant or if you're a black person in Jim Crow South, or if you're anyone trying to get a leg up from any kind of legislation that the United States is trying to pass, it's like, it's like, a mega. It's sort of like a huge corporation. This isn't really a fair. It's not. It doesn't do it justice, I would say. But like a big corporation and like one worker who has no, who's not allied with any union or is not like, who's not tied in somehow to increase their own power, because it's all about power. I mean, that's why white people in the U.S. are so belligerent. It's because they're scared to death of losing their power. Yeah, no. They're really scared of,
and they're not even
it
close,
not being
which is like
special,
the wild
of not having special status as a white person, and when there's something that looks like it, that if that looks like it's changing, like a black president, like then you get a lot of people starting to do crazy.
It's the same thing they accuse liberals of too. It's all grievance politics, right? Like the same thing they accuse the left of that. We're making up all these grievances so that we can be outraged and we can we actually have real things that we're fighting for that like are life and death matters in a lot of cases. But on their side, if we get what we want, nothing will happen to them. They'll be fine. They'll live their lives the same way they've always have.
Right.
But they've convinced themselves of all these imaginary problems of immigration and of I guess NFL players kneeling or all these imaginary problems that they can get mad at, and that they can, have these crazy draconian solutions that don't solve anything. It hurts them. It hurts themselves because let's take all these people out of our economy who are buying things and having mortgages and working at jobs. Let's take them all out of our economy and see what happens.
Right. Or even just even voting for this current administration, you're voting for a billionaire, supposedly, president that is going to take away your health care. This is a massive swath of Americans who are benefiting from this, but are willing to sort of get on board with someone who wants to repeal it because the previous administration liked it. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's your vote. You're voting against your own self-interest over and over and over and over again to preserve your identity.
Yep.
Which is so wild.
Right.
And what I've experienced, because
that pride.
Yeah. I mean, what I've experienced is sort of, and what I had, Josh, I was talking about before, what my Facebook post was that I was born in Iran, and then there was the war between Iran and Iraq. First of all, there was the revolution. I was born in 1980, so there was the revolution, the Iranian Revolution in 1979 to overthrow the Shah, which made way for the current regime, which wasn't the plan, but that's what happened. Well, they thought that, just like any despot, he promised this, and then all of a sudden the lights went out and it was a theocracy, and 30 years later, people are still suffering under its thumb. So then Iraq comes in opportunistically and attacks Iran with, U.S. backing. Yeah. So my dad's there. He's got a green card. He had studied in the U.S. He was going to college. He had come home to visit family, meets my mom, falls in love, gets married, has me. War breaks out, and now they got to go. And they can't have time to apply, right? They don't have time to apply. They can't wait for paperwork. So my dad's like, pack your bags, we're out of here. Wow. And what results is a year-long voyage to several different countries and several different continents with a then 3-month-old me, which now I'm a mother of a 2-year-old, and I mean, even coming here was like a yeoman's effort. I mean, I can't even imagine traveling, you know, basically being a refugee for an entire year.
Wow.
My parents come to Mexico. Long story short, we make it into Texas where we remained, and then where we sort of went through this rigmarole for 5 years to get our green card through my dad. And I didn't get my citizenship until my early 20s. So all of that to say is that I have always lived in sort of this sort of like netherworld, right? Where I'm not American to a white American. It's sort of like this question of like, what are you? Your skin's darker than mine, but like you don't have an accent. And that would always be the thing. Like, oh, what are you? Which is like such an offensive question. I'm a dog, I'm a cat, like what are you?
Yeah.
So then I would sort of say I'm from Iran. Most of the time people had never heard of it. Now it's been in the news a whole lot more. So, and when George Bush called it, you know, one of the axis of evil, sort of, you know, people became a little more aware sort of negatively about it. So then it was like, okay, what are you? Oh, you're this. And then it was like, oh, you don't have an accent. And I would say I came here when I was a year old. But you don't have an accent. I'm like, yeah, well, typically when you learn a language, like before you're 5 or 10 years old, like you don't have an accent. So you're not considered in high school. I was not considered. White guys never wanted to date me, you know, like, but I had never been to Iran. So if you think about it from like a DACA, from one of these dreamers or these young childhood arrivals, they're being threatened to be deported to these countries where they've never been.
They don't know.
They don't know. You know, they have no sort of. Yes, they have cultural ties. Like, you know, we ate Persian food. We spoke Farsi. I felt different. I felt Persian. But it wasn't until I graduated high school and I went back when I was 18. It was the first time I went back, and I was like, holy shit. Like, this is crazy. I've never lived in a place where everyone looks like me. Everyone speaks the same language. There's no explaining myself. But I had to be covered, and I was like, the whole time was a mind fuck. I was like, I was supposed to be here. Like, this is where I was born. But I felt so distant and so removed. And my Farsi, although I thought was good, I didn't know the slang. I couldn't like really kick it with my cousins, you know? Like, so I've always lived in this in between, which I think even people who've been here for generations that aren't white, you know, you don't feel like you belong, but you also can't go back to quote unquote where you came from, because what is that place? Yeah. You know? And
you had the experience of going back to where you came from.
I had the experience of going back to where I came from.
And it was a little bit
It was jarring. Yeah, it was really jarring and bewildering. Not because Iran is some backwards place where people are starving and living in huts. Like, no, not because of that, but because culturally, it's just so different. You know, it's the same thing when you go to Italy or France or somewhere as an American, you feel like you're a little bit out of place. Like, it's the same. Yeah. So I felt like I was in place because I was like, damn, everybody looks like me. Right. You know, I've been out on occasion where I'm like, oh, I hear Farsi. Like, oh, those people are Iranian. Mm-hmm. But this was, I mean, everywhere. So that was really wild to me. Yeah. But at the same time, I was like, I'm from here, but like I'm not from here. And that's how you feel here. Like, I'm from here, but I'm not from here. Wow. Which, you know, sort of brings me to what we were talking about, which was like, what does it mean to be white? Or like, what does it mean to be American? Like, I technically click, you know, the white box. I'm white ethnic, right? That's like, we're Caucasian, but like, nobody thinks I'm Caucasian. I'm not afforded the privilege of a white person.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Which is the conversation we were talking about before the show about Kim Kardashian, right? So people, you know, are probably even listening to me say her name. Like 50 million things come into their mind about like reasons to hate her. But I had been reading this article on The Root about all the different Beckys, right? All the different types of white woman, and she was mentioned as one of the types of white women. And the article is controversial in and of itself, right?
I read that when you said
did you?
it. I read it.
Yeah. And you know, it incites reactions.
Some painful truths,
right?
And it's also distilled, you know, types, you know,
right?
And then.
Types, exactly. Stereotypes or types. Yeah. And she's listed as one of the types of women who I think, you know, the Kardashians are always accused of appropriating black culture and benefiting from, you know, black culture, basically.
But she wouldn't come to mind as someone who is especially guilty of, I mean, how is she, is she heavily appropriating black culture? I don't know. Like,
well, I think
she married Kanye West. I
think their their bodies, I think Khloe Kardashian, especially the way she dresses, her fashion choices, the words they use, the people they associate themselves with, their bodies, for example, they are very curvy women, and so on them it's beautiful, right?
Right.
But on a black woman, it's vulgar. So this idea that having this giant ass on Kim Kardashian has vaulted her to supreme fame, whereas on a black woman it's just something completely different. So they have benefited from these, that is one of the sort of schools of thought on them. And I had gotten down this comment hole about Kim not being white. People were like, she doesn't belong in this article, she's not white. And other people were like, oh my God, she's as white as they come. She's from Armenia, which is in the Caucasus Mountains, which was where the Caucasians come from. And, it made me think, she's got the same coloring I do. I'm from Iran, which has a lot of similar part of the world, a lot of similarities in culture to Armenians. There are lots of Armenians who live in Iran.
Culturally
yeah, and so people don't think I'm white.
Right.
People just, you don't get treated as white. You don't get treated as American.
Let's take an example of just this, I'll totally out myself, that, there's these, in this blurry, in what seems to the, well-meaning white observer of, including myself earlier today, we were texting about what to talk about, and you mentioned what is whiteness, and my mind went to Kamala Harris, because we had Akil and I had talked about Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris is very fair-skinned. Her mom one of her parents is Indian, and one of her parents is black, right?
Yeah. Is he black or like an island?
Jamaican.
Jamaican, yeah.
And so in the course of this text, I said I mistook the two.
He was like, we should definitely talk about the Kamala Harris thing you suggested. And I was like, did I suggest something about Kamala? I don't remember. Remind me. And then for a second, I was like, does he mean Kim? But I was like, nah, she's a senator. You don't get these two people.
And my foot,
I get confused all the time.
Keeping up with the Kamalas.
Yeah. I watch that all the time.
Yeah, it's really good.
No, they're crazy.
My foot went right into my mouth, and I was like, oh. And then it took me a little while to actually write. I was like, oh, that was a little bit racist, because it is. But I don't know, Akil, what do you think? What do you think about, do you have any thoughts about what Sayeh's been saying, or anything related to,
first of all, just like Santa Claus and Jesus Christ, Kim is white. She just is, kids. But in terms of like what you've been saying about the other, whenever you're not white in America, everything around you is trying to tell you that you don't belong here, and your culture actually belongs more to us than you. And even in weaving into the Kim Kardashian thing, I think the
So you do think she's white?
I don't know. I think it's can be a choice for her. I think that's the thing. Right. I think because of her, a big part about it is her financial status, her wealth. Her wealth allows her to play up being, quote unquote, ethnic, not white, and appropriate to a certain extent what people would refer to as an ethnic culture to build her popularity. But if she ever so needed to, if she, for whatever reason, she could easily just kind of pull a Miley Cyrus, drop it all to the side, and be respectable Kim Kardashian, start wearing pantsuits or something. I don't know. But I think that's why what people say, in a different life, Kim might be more locked into being not white,
sure,
because of certain other like socio-economic stratification that America loves to have. Yeah, I mean that's where I I think we need to figure out why America needs this to happen so bad. You know, like why so much of American identity is like tied up in like this is American, everything else isn't.
Right.
Like, why do we need that so much? What purpose is that?
Right, exactly. Which is like why currently in this current sort of administration, in this current discourse about politics, has this thing reemerged about, well, if you don't like it, then get out.
Right.
You know, if you don't like it here, if you think the police are so bad and so oppressive, if you think your life is so terrible, then leave. And that the notion is you have somewhere else to go.
Right, and that you can just pack up and go.
That you can.
That you have a house and
or not
family.
even the can. Like,
Right.
it's you're from another place. I mean, the inherent accusation that you're leveling to someone when you say, if you don't like it, get out. It's like, you're not even supposed to be here.
You're not supposed to be here.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be here. We're allowing you to be here in this
Right.
great country of ours. So if you hate it, like, we don't have to take your suggestions to mind. Like, you're a guest.
Yeah.
Go back to wherever it is that you are really supposed to be, Muslim, Mexican,
Right.
African American. Like, this is our house,
Right.
and you're just sleeping over right now. But you can leave if you don't like
Well,
what I'm serving you.
Maybe in part, people who are so angry and willing to use this idea that other people are below them, and willing to use this idea that they belong, that white people thinking that they represent what America really is, and that other people just don't belong. I mean, does it come from a place of
It's pure
of a
racism.
kind of a pure racism? But what is racism? So like,
It's pure racism. It's saying like white is right.
Right.
Period. That's what it is.
But what I'm saying is that there's a chance that beneath the words and the anger and the actions and the atrocities is something about power. It's something about fear of losing power, and it's something about. So it's a kind of
but
of
why
insecurity.
why isn't within a race, right? So
Right.
say if you were to make this a completely white state, why are white people not threatened by one another? Like, why isn't the upper crust of white society threatened by the upwardly mobile white
the
middle
truth
class?
is that with every wave of new immigration, there have been totally racist against the Irish,
Right.
Italians,
Yeah.
Germans, every non sort of like WASP group.
But once the outer sort of the accents, whatever it is that has distinguished them, because their skin colors are the same, right? But whatever
Right.
it is that distinguishes them fades away,
Right.
then they're no longer the other, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why, for me, it just continuously comes back to, well, now, because how could I ever assimilate? My accent's not here. I've eaten macaroni and cheese at night watching The Voice.
Right.
Like, I'm as American as they come, but
Right.
but I'm never going to be American. Whereas, a lot of...
Put it this way. I mean, this might be like a misinformed or uninformed question or way of putting it, but do you ever have days where you're like, no, fuck it, I am American, fuck these assholes, and they're fucking gonna take a step back?
I will say, up until like probably the last 7 or 8 years, and this is what I wrote in my Facebook post, and I do believe immigrants are the most patriotic, the most grateful, the most American of Americans. And I got flack for that. Someone was like, "Oh, I said, there was one thing my parents taught me. It was that, like, be grateful for this country." My dad loves America more than some Trump-loving dude in Alabama. I promise you.
Yeah,
I mean, this
yeah,
dude.
yeah.
our parents, our family, like we're so grateful. And every day you're reminded of like how lucky you are and to be grateful and to take advantage and to work hard, all of these things. So I have always sort of been very vehemently feeling American, very patriotic. I remember I was with my in-laws years and years ago, and it was the 4th of July. We were at Long Beach Island. We had this like cherry pie. I mean, there was fireworks. You know, I'm feeling particularly American. And my sister-in-law, my mother and father-in-law are having this discussion about America and how wonderful it is. And my sister-in-law says, this country's not so great. And she starts to list like basically all the terrible things that are happening. And I remember feeling offended. Not offended that she was being rude, but just like, oh, I can't believe you're saying this about my country. Like, and really feeling like this is what someone who has grown up here with all of this privilege and advantage can say.
Right.
Like, you can very easily be like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And me, coming from my background, being like, yeah, but it's got this and it's got this and it does so much and we could be living here and it could be worse, and really feeling sort of this like defensiveness over my country that had done so much for my family.
Right.
But you know, as sort of I've become woke, as the kids call it, and as I've seen what's happened since Obama was voted in, and as I've gotten older, and you know, you're like, oh, like it is all those things. It is all those things. It's still all those things. But that doesn't mean it can't improve, and it doesn't mean it doesn't need to get better for a lot of people, a lot of white people too.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think. I mean, let me just say this. I think that a fair amount of the fighting and a fair amount of the straight up racism and the spirit of hatred comes from people who are in this mix of socioeconomic shifting and changing and sometimes getting the low end of the stick, although not always, because the average Trump voter was making like basically middle income.
Totally.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of rich people who are plenty racist, I can attest to, because of some of the people that, you know, were the parents of the kids that I went to elementary and middle school with at the private Quaker school that I went to. But I think you can find racists anywhere. It's not that I'm saying that they're, you know, racists are just within a certain class or within a certain, you know, set. I just think that it's more conspicuous among certain, or maybe because of how it's portrayed or what we see. Like you know, if we look back historically, it's more conspicuous that, like, you know, Southern slave owners and the Southern gentleman was a, you know, horribly racist, wealthy person. So there's no secret there. But I'm just thinking, I don't know, like I thought I'd just like share for a minute about like my own family, because my own family is by some definitions like as white as they get. And you know, my family came on the second voyage of the Mayflower, and my family that didn't come on the second voyage of the Mayflower came on other boats that came to the colonies.
That's wild.
And
why couldn't they get on the Mayflower, though? I don't understand.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Yeah, what's up with that?
Well,
They were not like on the first voyage.
No, look, like you can't always get a front row
Flip
seat.
this table. Get out of here.
Yeah, like,
Hey, look, all right.
respect, all right?
Look, we tried. You know, you can't always get what you want.
Yeah.
No, but you know, my dad pulled out a book of like the Burchards, like in, you know, throughout time, and there's like the Burchard that went out to the middle of Pennsylvania and like felled a bunch of trees and like built his log cabin, literally.
Yeah.
The Pennsylvania Turnpike was built around then, 1600s, and you know, he right away signed off his land and said, sure, like I'm all for it, and helped like fell all these trees. This is like old growth forests, so giant trees, blah blah blah. This is like the beginning of the narrative of America, and like it just goes on from there, and it goes on for everybody who is here, black folks, white folks, but white folks had the money. And white folks had the power. And
they also decided to come over here. They made the choice. It's like Betsy DeVos saying, like, HBCUs were, they should really celebrate school choice, and she really thinks that the HBCUs are a model of that. Well, what crazy person called black people immigrants?
Oh,
I don't remember that. So it's like, no,
the worst,
crazy lady. Like they couldn't go to the other school. That's why we have these schools. Also, we were brought here.
Yeah.
Like, that's a whole different... Your people were like, yo, we're going to miss that first ship, but like we're going to take the second ship, and we're going to like build some shit, and we're going to have a book, and like you can go on to Ancestry.com and like send us your DNA, and like you're welcome.
Yeah.
And is it...
That's just a whole different, not, ball game.
Well, and then like American white people have to realize how like lucky they had it, right? Like, so you get a whole country that you had to put up, you had to put up a fight, but not nearly as one because there was a plague that wiped out the majority of the Native American population before they even got here.
Right.
So you had these small, small might have been, well, I think either smallpox or Black Death, either. But
my brother Ethan went to Amherst, and Lord Jeffrey Amherst brought blankets to Native Americans, knowing that people had coughed all over them who had smallpox, so that they would.
Well, I'm saying that was when before.
Pass on.
I'm saying
Amherst
this is even before they got here.
But they did invent ultimate frisbee, so hey.
Really?
But even before they got here with the smallpox, there had been like a sickness event on the east coast of the country that like had wiped out a large part of the Native American population.
Non-white brought over, just sort of naturally occurring.
Yeah, it was a naturally occurring.
Okay, I didn't know.
When they got here, there was all this like farmland that was already prepared and stuff they could just like slide right into and like establish this foothold.
Right.
And then of course, the Native Americans to the south and the west came over, and then we know how that turned out. But they were able to gain a foothold because of blind luck, right?
Right.
And so then you fast forward, you have certain white families have all this wealth, and they build wealth, and then their kids are good, and their kids are good. It's all built on these like large pools of free to low cost labor. You just make immigrants and slaves do all the work. You don't have to do anything, but you build all this wealth.
You set it up, and you sit back and you watch the profits.
Yeah, and it's generational, so it gets passed down, and we build these little dynasties, these little fiefdoms all over the place. Then you have industry, like the Industrial Revolution, where you kind of you give corporations the same type of power that dukes and duchesses used to have. Now there's these little like mini kingdoms where these things grow and get out of control, and all the while they didn't really have to fight for it that much, right? So you fast forward to now, and what you're saying, like about how why don't you just go back, or like they think that they did something, right? They think that they actually built this country and earned it. Oh,
absolutely. One of my students wrote that on my Facebook page. He said, "But this is earned." I was like, "But the idea that it's earned, those same people are telling black people to get over slavery, right? They're saying, I never participated in slavery. I wasn't a slave owner. Why are you mad at me?" But yet they also want to take credit for earning this country, which is like, well, if that's how this country was earned, so you can't have it both ways. You can't say, I'm completely divorced from slavery and I don't need your shit about it, but also I earned this country and it's mine.
But you can't be completely black and white about it, because there were, millions of whites who were laborers and who were indentured servants and who did do the hard work. It's just that they did it on the whole foundation of this free labor and this enslavement and cheap labor and low wage or no wage labor.
And come on, that's the bare minimum. You want to work and survive? Big whoop. Whether you're not going to work and You know?
Yeah,
Like,
but you don't want to like completely dismiss. Like,
no, but that's what I'm saying. Put it in perspective, though. Like, yeah, they worked hard. They did a lot of stuff. They built a lot of things. They white people are responsible for a lot of cool shit.
No, it's
But
not to
that's
say like coming and colonizing an entire. Look, I used to think like there was a group of people that were in England who were like, this fucking sucks. Let's go start our own country.
Yeah.
Like let's go start our own shit. Like let's put some shit on a boat. Let's go. Like if you really think about that, like if you've even tried to like plan a party before, or plan a wedding, or even just get your friends together on a Friday, like that shit is impossible.
Yeah.
So like these people get on a boat, they come over here, like
they were persecuted religiously.
they're persecuted. They come over. They're colonizing. They're dying. In Jamestown. They're eating each other. The winter comes. I mean, they're on the Oregon Trail. They're colonizing the West. They're getting like it's not an easy thing, right?
Right.
It's not an easy thing. It is an accomplishment. It is a massive
Well,
feat.
yeah, but
also.
But it's on a false.
You also can't ignore
Yeah.
the other
No.
part of it, right?
And all I'm saying too is like it just doesn't make you distinctive, right? It means that you did something incredible, but so has almost every other culture that's been in the world has had to do incredible things to create a civilization.
Right.
So kudos, congratulations, you get to pat on the back. But like this whole American exceptionalism thing, like calm down, guys. Like
Right. You had a whole like slice of a continent to reap the wealth of, and did successfully. And not only did you do it, but you did it, or we did it, by enslaving people and conscripting people and fighting wars overseas to keep our interests held over there, and
which I love that's never the narrative, right? The narrative, especially right now with all the kneeling and the flag, the narrative is like, we went over there to fight for your right to disagree, or we went over there to preserve your right.
And now at home,
but that's not really. I mean,
no,
we're over there stealing shit.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And so that's the thing that drives me insane. I'm not, and look. I do not discount what the men and women in our military do. Like that shit is fucking awful for their families, for them, what they experience, what they feel that they are over there doing.
Right.
But the people who are moving the chess pieces up in a room upstairs, like they're like there's oil over there.
The Dick Cheneys and
or like
Donald Rumsfelds and
the case of Iran. They wanted to get rid. Like you think that one day everyone in Iran decided to overthrow the Shah? They had British and American help.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean that's been happening. That's tale as old as time. So this idea that we're out here and that's
and then in Iran, when the Shah was overthrown by people
when he was initially installed by the Americans, by the way.
He was installed by the Americans.
He was installed. Then he gets a little big for his britches, so they're like, you're trying to make decisions on your own. We need you out.
And wasn't he installed over a democratically elected?
Yes, absolutely. And he was assassinated.
And,
so that's and so you have people being like, we can't be the world's policeman.
Right.
We can't go solve everybody's problems. I'm like, honey, you're causing everybody's problems.
Yeah.
That's
then
part
how
of
much
this.
of it is
We're the greatest country narrative in the world.
How much of it is a lack of education in this country?
1,000%.
Yeah.
If you're, this is the thing I was thinking. I was talking to my Uber driver on the way over here, my Lyft driver. We just, what I was about to go do and what we were going to talk about. And I was, how people say America is the best country in the world, yet the last statistic I heard is that 20% of Americans have passports, right?
Right.
And so only 20% have passports. Who knows how many of those actually travel, where they travel, to be able to say we are the greatest country in the world. And there are folks in this city, in Philadelphia, students I work with that never left North Philly.
No, I know.
There are people, I have a friend who didn't get on an airplane, grew up in Texas till she was 18.
Yeah.
Didn't leave Texas. That's a big place. You can drive for 10 hours and still be in Texas, but damn. So first of all, what are you basing that on? Have you gone everywhere? And then there's these, these memes that I keep seeing that are like, yesterday, Saudi Arabian women, which they did, got the right to drive for the first time, right?
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
And so there are people who have used that to say, and people in America think that they're oppressed as fuck Because we're always comparing ourselves to, you know, we're like, oh well, that means that means there's no room for improvement here. It's like telling your girlfriend who has a shitty boyfriend who like doesn't support her and who's lazy and sits on the couch and doesn't have a job and has been mooching on her and sort of like
at least you're
tells
not
her
with,
she's fat.
At least
He's
he
like,
doesn't beat you.
At least doesn't beat you, right?
Yeah.
And so that means we can't have any complaints and we can't say
better than a brutal theocracy. Yeah. All right. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. And can we go to Norway for a second? Like, can we go to Sweden for a second? Yo, can we go just like a couple hours north to Canada for a second and talk about their healthcare, talk about their maternity leave, talk about their diversity and their inclusion? Are they perfect either? No, but like this idea that we're the best and it's just because we say so and we can't solve everybody's problems. Like there is this notion that we're the best and we're out there in the world trying to help everybody else. I'm like,
well, you see it when you get Republicans who are like, we're deficit hawks. We have to cut this frivolous spending. Let's cut foreign aid.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Let's cut 0.000000000.2% of the budget. Cool. Great. Good job, guys. And it is frustrating because like the people who believe in it, they kind of need it, right? Because tangibly, they know their life isn't that great. They know that.
Do they? I wonder that. Honestly, I really wonder that sometimes.
I think you have to.
Do they feel that way?
I think you have to ask the individual person.
I think it's a subconscious thing. I think it goes two ways. These are the people that know that, like, so on some type of level, they know that they're like getting screwed over somewhat, and they have to like create this fiction where no, this is great, we love it, it's awesome. And then there's the people that like kind of know that they're successful, and they kind of know their success is like built on a lot of other people's suffering, and then they have to find a lie to like. I think it's all just about like convincing yourself that all these problems aren't your fault.
Right. Well, I think it's all back to like just otherizing. Like Americans are we otherize the entire rest of the planet. Like everybody else who's not American is like, it's to be pitied. You know, to feel sorry for, that need to be helped, that need to be policed. You know, it's this like this other like, you know, even France, like. It's the whitest, most European country in the world. And for a while, they were like, oh, the freedom fries and the, it's like, you can't, how do you...
We have people out here advocating that we destroy all of North Korea, like every man, woman, and child in North Korea. 25 million people, because it's, it might be a little bit hard to do diplomacy, or it might be a little difficult to like find a solution. So, why even chance it? Let's just murder 25 million people.
Yeah, not recognizing that Seoul, South Korea is literally like 2 minutes away.
Yeah.
So
like, how are you gonna nuke the DMZ and not destroy Seoul?
Or get there before they destroy.
Yeah.
Right, the idea that if you're, to go back to our notion of like, if you disagree, then you need to go back where you came from, and sort of that why during the 8 years that Obama was president, which in my sort of lifetime, and maybe it's because I was old enough to pay attention, and I mean, was the most like vociferous disagreement with a president I'd ever seen, right? The most vehement, the most vitriolic disagreement with the president, but never in those 8 years did I ever hear conversation about anyone saying to those people, if you don't like it, and if you don't like him, get out.
Right.
If you don't like this, then leave. If you don't like America, then get out. Like, that was never part of the conversation.
Obama's presidency is, to a lot of scholars, is considered this something that was so unbearable to so much of white America, just that he was black and that he was our president, that it lit a fire underneath.
It overheated some white people's circuits. They didn't know how to. They had to like reboot
they were
for a
geniuses
second.
though. Like, if you think about it, if they live by the credo that disagreeing with your leader, right? Because now that Trump is elected, God ordained it. So why, right?
Yeah.
But when Obama was but they did this thing where, so they have the stance, if you disagree, then it's not American, it's not patriotic. But so what they did is they made him not American, right? He wasn't born here. He's a Muslim. So the fact that we are saying all of these really horrible things about him,
it's excused.
It's totally okay because we're not being un-American. He's the un-American one.
It's better than okay. It's patriotic.
It's patriotic.
Yeah.
By the way, it's ordained by God because he's a Muslim.
He's a Muslim.
And we cannot have this. It's really ingenious, if you think about it.
By the way, I'm descended from U.S. President.
Josh, can I borrow some money?
Incidentally, yeah.
Can I borrow some money?
Pockets are kind of tight, and another U.S. president, but one is Rutherford Burchard Hayes, okay?
Oh, geez.
And the other one is Barack Obama. We share a common ancestor.
What?
Yeah.
Did you find this on Ancestry.com?
My uncle has been researching our family, and there's a common ancestor.
Some shit I can't do.
Straight
I
off the
can't go on to Ancestry.com and find my family tree. That commercial with the little leaves, I'm like, there you go, Ancestry.com.
You can get your DNA analyzed, and it'll tell you that you're Iranian.
Yeah, I know, no thanks. And then it can be in some Trump, Steve Bannon book somewhere.
Oh, God.
They put me down for ethnic cleansing.
The big book of scapegoats.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah.
Well, dude, why don't you call up, get Barry on the show, man?
Listen, you said there's a build up over time of money and stuff like that, and that's that can be true, but it can also be like a money comes and money goes thing, because and just real quick, this doesn't really have much to do with the topic.
I was like, wait, I didn't want to be rude. I was like,
I thought this was you were going to tell me that you're getting Barack Obama on the show.
This is me telling you that
you got some Rutherford B. Hayes money.
Like amassing wealth isn't just an assurance that you're gonna it's gonna be sift on down through the generations, because one of my more immediate ancestors inherited a fortune and bought a house in Maine, bought a house in New Jersey, bought a house in Florida. I bought a fishing village in Florida.
This is very East Coast of your family.
Was an alcoholic and lost. Entrusted his money with a money manager. Who ended up using his money to try to merge with another guy's fortune that was struggling, and then the whole thing tanked basically.
Is that Nicki Minaj's guy?
What's that?
The Nicki Minaj's money manager? I heard he's
Rihanna's
beats me.
Really
Rihanna, yeah.
But anyway, this is totally gross that I'm even talking about this. But basically, he lost all his money overnight, and he was not a happy guy after that. So So
what are you saying?
So what I'm saying is it's weird because it's something I'm finding out about. I never knew anything about I knew some things about my past, but I never knew the details.
Sure.
And I'm privileged enough that I get to know the details, and there's more stories. But the interesting thing is that being raised as the first two, we got a TV, we got a VCR when I was 5. The first thing we watched, we didn't watch TV. I could only watch 3 TV shows a week when I was a kid. And the first thing we watched on the VCR was Eyes on the Prize, and that was about the civil rights movement. It was a 12-hour documentary.
Explains a lot, right?
Yeah. And the second thing we watched was Roots, which is about the movie.
No.
And then and then I watched The Simpsons for like 16 years.
But wait, so what are you saying? You're saying that the pedigree, I'm trying to get to the heart of what you're saying. So that like the pedigree doesn't always guarantee the class or the status, or what is it?
What I'm saying is like, what I'm saying is that just to like share a little bit about myself, because my parents were, fought for civil rights and fought here and abroad for, the U.S. to draw down militarily and so on and so forth. My parents are very educated and socially minded people, and life can still, life was, I always, knew and had a sense that, that there was something complicated about being white, and that it wasn't just some, something that, there's a whole, that history is like waving out behind us, and that, it's a living history, and that, there's nothing, that to be white and liberal and educated is to be sensitive and introspective and educated about what's going on. Now, does that mean that did I live like a perfect life of doing those, having those habits? Like, no. But did I spout racism? No. Mm-hmm. And did I feel like a lot of hatred and race-based hatred? Like, no. But it's interesting because I didn't feel like, I had some years where I wasn't so sure, where I fit in or where I belonged to. But it was like it wasn't because I came from a different country, and it wasn't because, I was African American and didn't have a sense of what's my place in this country. Fact is, I wasn't even having the awareness of what my place was in this country, even though it was all around me.
Right. You're having an internal
just
struggle.
having a teenage,
Sure.
What the fuck is going on?
Sure. Right. Yeah.
And so in the end, it's not over yet, but it's just kind of, I don't know, I just thought I'd share it because it's sometimes I think like speaking from one's own experience is the strongest point of view that you can take, because I can talk about where I think other people's racism comes from and all of that, but really when it comes down to it, if I can talk about what my experience was, that's the most in line with actual reality. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that there's that conversation, that there's this not all white people conversation.
Yeah.
Which I'm not necessarily saying that you're saying, but
no, that's not what I'm saying.
But kind of a little bit, like you're like, I'm gonna kind of put a face and a voice to my experience, which is not a racist experience, right?
No,
as a white person.
No, do you want to hear more? Because I can. There's more to the story, and it wasn't. I said, that I never had. I don't know if I did say I never had race-based hatred. I don't think I had hatred, but I've had. I had a period that I don't know. I think I talked to you about. It's sort of like the prototypical white person rendezvous with racism experience, which is that I got mugged twice.
Okay. In
my old neighborhood, and it just the second time, not the first time, the second time, it clicked something in my head, and this latent racist fear got kicked in, and like I walked around with that for like 6 months.
Right.
And it was crazy. Like it's
Jarring for you because you
Yeah.
never sort of thought or felt that way before.
Yeah, and I think it's false to say that like, I've never like thought of another group and had a stereotype about them or
Look, everybody is bigoted.
right. Everybody's
Everyone
bigoted.
has
Everyone is
prejudice,
bigoted,
yeah.
myself included.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, Iranians are bigoted against each other.
Right, right.
There's this like people from the north of Iran are like this, people from the south of Iran are like this, and then you get here, and then within your immigrant community, it's the working class. It's this. I mean, everybody's bigoted. The issue is when shit gets systemic, right?
Right.
That's what people are really reacting to. I think the everyday bigotry is incredibly problematic, right? These microaggressions that you experience as a person of color, or even a white person, right?
Yeah.
In a different community, like you have these microaggressions that people they build up and they build up and it happen and they lead to these new thoughts and new feelings and new. That's all real. I mean, I think takes a lot of education, a lot of interaction, and you still are gonna stumble back there. I think
Right.
what people are reacting to right now is to say to white people, right? Like, even the nicest, most Mayfloweriest, most persecuted came over here to try to make a better world, great ally is benefiting from these systems in a way that is just, you don't even know you're benefiting.
Right.
Like,
Right.
the fact that you could walk, and I say this to my husband about being a man. I mean, I want to walk to CVS at night, and like, I really am like, I'm not going to do that, because as a woman, you walk around thinking like, I could get raped. As a dude, my husband's like, I'm going to walk from the bus to the thing. I might be half drunk. I might have my headphones in. Like, I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
Which is never a thought a woman has, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, we all live in a world where we have these little things going on. But I think if you're a white male, if you're white, woman, it's worse, but not as bad as people of color. Like, your vote, you're talking about people in a room like redistricting lines so that you're not represented in this way.
Right.
That, when I worked in the mayor's office doing education work, they did this study in Pennsylvania of black schools and white schools of similar socioeconomic status, right? So a lot of people point to it's money, it's underfunding, it's exactly the same socioeconomic status, and it's black schools and white schools. And still, the white schools are still getting better resources, better funding.
Right.
Why? Because they have representation in the places where those decisions are getting made.
Right.
So, it's so systemic, it's so ingrained, it's on every single level. So it's like, how do you even disentangle it that white people just don't even know? Like, it's starting to become something that I think people of color are saying out loud, which for a long time people weren't saying this. Like, you're really lucky in a way that you don't even know that you're lucky. Right? Like,
Yeah,
it's
true.
So I think people react to like, but I'm not racist. No, I'm sure you've never used the N-word, and I'm sure you've never, until you got mugged, thought a bad thought. But
Probably had a black friend once.
Yeah. But like, you wake up every day and you put your name on a resume and send it through, Indeed.com, and someone who gets it on the other end is like Ethan Burchard, It's not Sayeh Hormozy, which was my maiden name, or, some other ethnic sounding name or black name, you know what I mean? So even on those levels, it's like...
Yeah, absolutely. Or when people call a job or call a cable company or call whatever, a lot of times, even the way you speak, it's called
the sound of your
linguisticism.
Yeah.
It's there's discrimination based on the sound of your voice.
Absolutely.
If you try to sell something on eBay and you put your black hands in the photo, you're less likely to sell it, or you get lower bids on it.
Yeah.
And I think that if you to tie back some other things we've been talking about, like, it's possible for a white person to be mediocre in this country and make it.
Right.
And be fine.
Yes.
And that's the way it should be in a rich ass country. Everyone doesn't need to be Steve Jobs in order to survive.
Sure.
But if you're a minority, you need to be Steve freaking Jobs.
Right.
Just to,
you need to be that DACA supreme being. You need to be that kid who's never made a mistake ever in his life. Like you need to be the kid who somehow went from Camden to Harvard. Like you need to be that exception. And my sister once had the world's worst boyfriend, which thank God he's gone. But I remember we went out to dinner once and he said to me, there are people who do make it out of the hood. They do. You hear stories about, the people who do. Like if they want to, they can.
Right.
You hear about like these homeless to Harvard stories. So it's on them. Which, before I like flipped his sushi into his face, I was just like, this is why when you don't even know how privileged you are, when you really have no idea how rigged the system is, of course you think to yourself, if you want to do something, just do it. You can do it. These people just don't want to.
Right.
They're just being lazy. They just don't want to. Like that. There's no other reason why you could live in this world and think to yourself, well, people who want to do it can do it. People of color. When you really understand the odds they're up against.
Right. The obstacles.
And for the longest time, black people, I know for a fact, at least we were sold this bill of goods. I think that's why there was such a kind of like quiet period from like the end of the civil rights movement to now, where we still had this police brutality, we still had this ever increasing prison population based on the war on drugs and other things, but we had this narrative, and at least like way I grew up and a lot of my friends grew up, and even in popular culture, and like the Cosbys and then our like heroes, it was all about you work hard, you work twice as hard to get half of what they got. Right. And it was like this badge of honor that as a black person, you have to be super perfect, you can't make any mistakes, you gotta never get in trouble with the law. If a cop approaches you, you can't be frustrated or upset, you have to be completely, submissive and subservient, and watch out for white people because we know they're racist, but it's not their fault, so just be really, really nice to them. Just tell them their hair smells nice, and then and then you do all of that, maybe if you're lucky, there'll be one spot there for you. Yeah. And maybe you'll get in there just to get paid a little bit less than the people that worked half as hard as you.
You're expected to have perfect harmony in your mind about all these things.
And make them comfortable with you on top of all of that.
Right.
Like that's the other and deal with being tokenized and sort of everything else that comes along with it when you get there. Sort of being the representative of your culture or your race,
Yeah. So there was a This American Life episode that kind of broke me a little bit. It was about this. It was this inner city school, and they had this program where they would they would go and get the brightest kids, and there was these spots in universities. So it's basically your standard you work hard, you can get this scholarship, you can go to a good school. And there was this one girl they follow she was the subject of this American Life episode, and she was bright, she was smart. Everyone thought she was really, really smart, but she just there was a limited amount of spots, and she just wasn't smart enough. She was smart, she was talented. She could have gone to a college, but it was this very small little.
This episode.
Yeah.
Vaguely, keep telling it.
Well, yeah, and so then they end up going to visit the school.
Yeah.
And she feels really out of place, and there's just it's very foreign and and to her, and there's nothing there to help her tell her that she belongs.
Right.
And then she gets back and she has to take the test, and she just misses the mark to make it. She doesn't get selected. It wasn't even that her test wasn't good. It's just she didn't get selected.
Right. Right.
And and then after that, then you find the familiar story. She drops out of high school. Right. She, her friends lose touch with her, and then she ends up getting pregnant, I think. Yeah. And as a
and she's working at a supermarket.
She's working at a supermarket, and then that's unreasonable, right? To have to tell a whole group of people that you have to do everything right. You have to be smarter than average. You have to be more disciplined than average. And all the people around you, all the white people around you that don't have to be all those things. And then even still then, you still might not make it, but you keep doing it, keep trying it until you die. That's unreasonable and it's inhumane.
Yeah,
and
it's not right. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, it's just...
It's not feasible for any person. Yeah.
I will say what I think is happening to sort of, I think, join the thread of what you've been saying of like this fear of loss of power, this fear that's happening that might be responsible for some of what we're seeing, is that this idea of the American dream has always been out of reach, right? For people of color, or they've had to work double, triple hard to get a little tiny slice of it. But I do think, and for the longest time, like you said, if you're a white person, as long as you don't fuck it up too bad, like you should be fine, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that now that's been changing for white people too.
Yes.
And I think that this idea that you can go to school, you can learn a trade, or you can maybe even not graduate or just get your high school diploma and get your manufacturing job or do what your dad did or whatever is the case, and you're working a 9-to-5 job or a shift work or whatever it is, you were able at one time to provide for your family, sometimes on one income, right? Your mom stayed home.
Yeah.
You had your little house. You had your little circle. You were able to make ends meet. You weren't living like, you weren't flying to Bermuda, but you were
But you took a vacation.
You would go. Yeah, you drove somewhere.
Yeah.
You got in the family car that you bought, and you drove somewhere on Route 66, and you saw the Grand Canyon, and you came back or whatever. Like that's not happening anymore, and that's really real, and it's been real for a lot of people for a long time, where they've got 2 and 3 jobs and they still can't pay the bills, and they're working their asses off. But I think it's happening more that this
wages
promise
have just stagnated so badly, and people's incomes are so low at this point compared to what they have to pay for, diapers and
for healthcare.
food and healthcare.
Yeah, my parents are
else.
a perfect example. They came here in the early 80s, and my mom went to cosmetology school and started her own salon. She had her own salon. She had a couple women there working with her / for her. My dad started a little computer business, and they did really well for a while. Then, we moved out of our little neighborhood where I was really happy. I didn't know better. We went to the wealthier white suburb where coincidentally I was then all of a sudden bullied and teased and realized I was not American and realized I was something else. But before then, where I lived in my really diverse neighborhood, had no idea.
Right.
So, the more successful we got, sort of the more other we got, right? My dad then, he drove nice cars. We were like classic Persian, flashy immigrants, doing really well. And then 2008 hits, and, the computer business changed, and my dad's business went under, and my mom couldn't stand on her feet forever. And now, they're in their 60s. They don't have a nest egg because they are not of this world, or they don't have this generational, sort of mindset of like saving your money and financial, investing and stuff that, like, for example, my husband's family, and my husband is just super intrinsic to him. He's always lived in this family where they were very smart about money. But, my parents are immigrants, and they get it, they spend it. They get it, they spend it. And you know what? They're sending it home. And they're sending it to my dad has 6 brothers and sisters. My mom has 6 brothers and sisters. They all have a ton of kids, and they're keeping families afloat overseas, right? And so now here they are in their 60s in the America that they love, the America that they poured a fuck ton of money into and to the economy. And now they may or may not get their Social Security. My parents, now they were so excited to have Obamacare and finally have, their whole lives we couldn't afford insurance because they were small business owners, and it was basically impossible. We were on it, we were off it. And now I'm like, what's going to happen to my parents, right?
Yeah.
Like, they made a shit ton of money. The stock market tanked. My mom works her ass off now. My dad works his ass off now. They're not retired. And they're retired age. And what's going to happen to them if my mom or my dad, God forbid, gets sick? Like, if they repeal healthcare, what's going to happen to them? So now this country I've watched, like, my parents sort of start to have this conversation of, like, maybe we need to go back home.
Wow.
Maybe it's time to go back to Iran, because for all of its issues, you don't see this. People have, when people own things, they own them forever. There's not this world of credit where the companies own you so that you can sort of try to buy this a little bit. There's this different sort of world and system. So they're like, and there's family, right? There's families, tons of families, and they get together and they take care of each other and they make it work. So my parents now, my most vehemently patriotic dad, they're like kind of feeling let down. They're like, we worked and we worked and we worked and we worked.
Right.
And we, maybe we could have made better decisions. That stock market tanked in 2008. They lost a lot of money. So, it's partially their fault. But really, we're going to have nothing? Like, and you're not even going to, like, pay for me to like go get my knee surgery I need, or like whatever is the case, like after being here longer than I was in my own country at this point, like that's fucked.
Yeah.
And I think white America is feeling that
Yeah, we
now
felt it.
and has been feeling it. And so what do you do when that happens? You blame somebody.
Yeah. And that's and that's the only way this has ever worked in this country is that we've always given the majority of white America something to blame whenever the upper class needs to, take more of the pie. Every time white America starts feeling what everyone else feels, the propaganda comes in, swoops in, and says, "Hey, it's not our fault. It's their fault. It's the Mexicans. It's the illegal immigration. No, it's the blacks' fault because their cities are, they're selling drugs and whatever." And then it's like, and now there's a distraction, and you can't take a look at like, well, wait, why can't we have universal health care? Well, what's wrong with a higher minimum wage? Like, why are we like, doing all? Why are we giving tax cuts to the people that don't need it? And like,
we're fighting over crumbs.
Yeah.
People are like fighting over the little crumbs without like looking up and be like, damn, this dude is like eating 3/4 of the pie.
Yeah.
Like this
but
one dude.
People look up at that dude and they're like, oh, like that dude,
he's got it figured out.
Yeah, he's got it figured out.
Right.
Yeah. Which is wild.
Which is just
wild.
like, that guy had a lot of advantages most likely, and he's got like someone managing
and gives no shits about you.
None.
No shits about you.
It doesn't care about you.
But even that is a selling point because people look up and that's aspirational. I want to be that guy that doesn't give a shit about anything.
Right.
I want to be Trump.
Right.
They want to be like what they think Trump is.
Yeah, it's wild. Like they could have like the least in common with him.
Yeah.
And to think that he looks out for their best interest, which brings us to his tax reform, which he's put out, which no one knows the details of, and no one knows if he'll benefit from because.
Oh no, they know because at least we know
he'll have his returns.
He'll cover his.
At least we know they're going to repeal the estate tax, so we at least know that's going to benefit his family
by almost $1 billion. They say, right?
Yeah. All right, well, let's bring it to a close.
All right,
you ready?
Let's
all right, it's been real. Thank you very much, Sayeh.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
It's been great having you and your perspective. And Akil.
Hey, thanks for having me too. I don't get to do this often.
On the next episode, I want to come back. I want you to take that leather-bound book off the shelf wherever it is, the Burchard family tree.
Oh, God.
I want us to page through those golden-rimmed pages.
Each one will be a flip of my guilt-ridden.
I love it. Can we make this a series?
Liberal guilt, like, turn a page. Liberal guilt, turn a page. No,
Liberal guilt, the series. I like it. It could be a sub-show of Hold This Mic.
All right. It's been real. We're going to stop there before it gets any more real. All righty. See you next time.
Hallucination. You basically escaping from hallucination. Making do with fake is just a new vacation. So it seems so concerned with the scene. I prefer a lucid dream on. Dream of nights like these, dream of take a flight. Dream of heights like these, dreams is fucking nice. Get right like me, I'ma be alright. Man, I do this nightly, yeah. You should tell me what you know. Now you should tell me what you see. I think it's gonna be a very nice night. I think it's gonna be like it was all a dream. You should tell me what you know. Now you should tell me what you see. I think it's gonna be a very nice night. I think it's gonna be like it was all a dream. And then you dream you turn nightmare. I'm right here looking for my buzz like light. Yeah, light years ahead of you cats. There's so much light here. Like here it's bigger than rap, so I'm alright.